welcome to the latest in our series of RPA webinars. Today we're going to focus on scaling operations without the need to increase headcounts and how automation solutions can actually assist us in doing that. We're going to start by looking at sort of some of the causes and some of the reasons why organisations look towards automation to assist them in scaling, how we go about fixing the problem, and obviously the role of technology in this. So if we look at some of the causes and some of the drivers for why companies are looking at automation, I think it's important to sort of understand what's going on in the industry. And if we look at industry stats for something like manufacturing and transport, we can see that since sort of 2009, productivity's increased by something in the order of 58%. Now there's lots of reasons for this, but primarily what automation or what manufacturing and transport have done is they've moved from what was traditionally a very manually task orientated process, highly prone to errors, very long processing times, because obviously it's limited by the number of people you've got interacting with that process and the number of employees that you have. So again, very, very difficult to scale because you've got to scale by increasing that headcount. Obviously that becomes extremely expensive and again very, very time consuming, as we've already said. Now what you've seen in the manufacturing industry, that an awful lot of those companies, a lot of those organisations have moved from a manual process and a manual production line to automated and to the use of engineering and manufacturing robots on that production line. Now obviously what we're not talking about today is manufacturing and engineering style robots, we're talking about software robots. But if we take the automation and manufacturing industry and what they've done in the past to increase productivity and compare that with something like financial services and insurance, we can see that their productivity has actually fallen by something in the order of 10% since 2009. From our experience, what we found is that the reason insurance companies and financial services companies are struggling to sort of increase productivity is that the majority of their processes are based on human interaction. They're based on humans actually undertaking transactional tasks, and whilst they're investing in technology, we're finding that really process change, requirements for regulatory change, essentially financial services companies, insurance companies are unable to adapt quick enough, primarily because of the systems that they're using. They have large-scale systems of record, some of which talk to each other, some of which don't, but they're not able to move with speed and agility when it comes to changing those systems. And so they tend to rely more on human operatives than they do on their systems and automation to actually drive their processes. So what we're going to look at today is an example of a leading insurance broker that we've done some work with recently, who have actually taken a different view of this and used low-code development platforms and low-code RPA platforms to actually drive process automation throughout the business. And in one particular example, where they've taken a low-code approach to building a dashboard and an interface for users to engage with, to actually drive a process and then interact with a robot to actually do the manual transactional tasks, if you like, the heavy lifting, and all of the calculations in the background to achieve a claims renewal. So the business that we're talking about have something in the order of 110 employees supporting this overall process. They renew 800 policies per year, and essentially each policy takes something in the order of 25 hours to process. So that's 20,000 processing hours per year, 25 days per employee annually, and 43% of everything they are doing is manually processed. So the challenges that they're facing is that users are basically spending too much time rekeying data across multiple systems. They're generating documents based on that data, and that's coming from several systems and various Excel-based calculators. And the fact that they're doing all of that manually, obviously errors can creep into that process. So one of their concerns obviously is speed, the other one obviously is the accuracy of the data. So their objectives in terms of sort of automating this process was to increase customer satisfaction, increase the ease to do the business across both customers and insurance providers, and obviously speed that up, but also very much to give them differentiation in the marketplace, and so that they can be seen to be an organisation that are using technology to its utmost to drive differentiation, and to a certain extent, disrupt the marketplace. So before we move on and look at the actual demonstration of the solution we provided for this business, the first thing to look at is some of the key areas that we approached with the organisation to unlock their productivity. The first sort of area was to look at the fact that the business needs to be in control and have the tools and capabilities to deliver to their clients' needs and the business demands, and to be more agile in the way that they can actually do this internally, and hence the use for low-code platforms. It's a question for us of giving them a core framework to underpin the operations and enable key teams within the organisation to be able to report on what's going on, and be actually able to take control of that framework. And finally, it's all around automating high volume repetitive tasks and to streamline that process based on ROI to drive the results and drive that business value. So the demo that we're going to show you today really focuses on those core areas and really empowering that organisation to take control of the platforms that they have, to be able to, in an agile fashion, drive innovation across their processes, and then the way that they automate those, and the way that those processes then interact with human operatives that, due to the automation, are freed up to do more strategic things for the organisation and things of greater value. So one of the things that we've found in terms of these projects is obviously that when businesses are looking at changing their systems and adapting their systems and the processes that they're undertaking, is that the time to value is absolutely critical. And when you're looking at deploying solutions within any organisation, the ability to launch something out to the business that actually impacts on what people are doing very quickly, delivers that business case and that ROI expediently, that's what drives innovation and adoption of these solutions. If you talk about things and you decide that something needs to change, but it takes an awful long time to do that and a high cost to do that, then generally people revert back to that example that we gave earlier of just sticking with human operatives and relying on human operatives to scale those solutions or those processes. So having launched something very quickly within the business, obviously it doesn't remain or doesn't stay there. It's important that we iterate. It's important that we get something out into the business, but then grow that and review it and change it, and that it iterates and it evolves over time, so that the process becomes far more streamlined, far more effective. It takes account of perhaps data from more systems, and actually the automation does more of the end-to-end solution. And when we're talking about robotics and RPA, that may include or may include things like artificial intelligence or machine learning, so the robots are actually doing more and more of that work for the human operative, again freeing that person up to do something of greater value to the business. So before we get started in deploying any solutions for clients, it's important that we focus on the process. And just looking at processes generically, what you tend to find obviously is that processes are made up of multiple stages. Each of those stages tend to have tasks associated with them. They may have documents associated with each of those tasks. There are certainly people interacting with each of those tasks. And what we look to do at Velocity is to understand that, but we also then include all of the integrations that are likely to happen along the way with those processes. So where are documents being stored and how are those being accessed? What events systems need to integrate with those processes or those stages, and equally, contacts databases, contact systems, CRM perhaps, how that integrates with a process, and obviously looking at all of those elements from the stages, the tasks, the documents and people that are involved with each of those systems, and then the integrations, allows us to build a solution from end to end that applies the level of automation that's necessary, and brings in the data from all of those multiple sources to ensure accuracy across that task, and that we're essentially carrying out all of those same tasks and interactions that a human operative would do, but applying automation to those. So if we look then at the specific process for the insurance policy renewal, it starts with a pre-renewal. We then move to triage, preparation and processing. Obviously each of those stages still have their independent tasks. If we look at pre-renewal, it's about generating the pre-renewal report, sending that pre-renewal report to the client, renewing the risk on the policy database. There's instructions and templates that need to be completed, and from a context point of view, you've got the policy database, premium calculator and policy performance report that are actually aiding that process. So what we've done is we've taken all of those tasks, we've understood the process completely, and then looked at the levels of integration with things like SAP and the policy database, and all of the documents and certificates that are required to fulfill that process. And what we've done is we've taken that to build out a solution for the insurance company that starts with a low-code based dashboard that enables the human to undertake that task in a very easy, streamlined manner. So here you can see our users dashboard with one policy renewal showing as an active task. This dashboard's been created in a low-code platform, so it's bespoke to the insurer, but obviously forms the framework for any level of automation that we want to do, or any processes that they want to drive through this dashboard. And it's essentially the way that the human operative interacts with the process, and you'll see as we go through the demo, it's the area where the human operative will actually kick off the robotic process. So if we drill down into that policy renewal, you'll see that opens up two tasks, one of which is for the property renewal, which if we drill down into that, you can see all of the information regarding the pre-renewal. Obviously we've got the stages there, the pre-renewal, the triage, the preparation and the process, so we're mapping that overall process through the dashboard, and we can see at the top of the screen how long that process has actually been open and number of days at each particular stage, and we can also then start to see some key metrics around loss ratio, and what's happening actually with that task. So scrolling down we can see again the loss ratio, but also things like claim by peril, and the property types broken down by residential and commercial, so really just dragging data from multiple sources to give us this key metrics and this key data, all presented at the user's dashboard and for their convenience. On the left hand side of the dashboard, you'll also see that we have a number of controls for things like calendars, so we can actually schedule things throughout the dashboard. We can interact with our contacts through the dashboard, and similarly with documents and reports. So essentially the user has at their disposal all of the data that they require on a regular basis, but also all of the actions that they're going to need to undertake throughout this process. So scrolling further down, we can also see the tasks that the person has to undertake, and also at the bottom of that the links, things to other applications, template documents, so you'll see the pre-renewal calculations template there, you'll see the pre-renewal template that's going to be used throughout this process, and then the actions that the individual would take, so they can move it to the next stage, they can update status, they can close it, but what we're really going to focus on today is the pre-renewal report generation. So if we click on pre-renewal report generation, that will actually trigger our robot. It asks us to confirm whether we want to do that. As I say, that will trigger the robot to go off and produce the pre-renewal report. So it will take the data from all of the relevant sources. And here you can see that the robot's actually now starting to engage with the process. It's pulling together all of that data from multiple sources. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up the Word template document, the pre-renewal calculator in Excel, and it's going to actually summarize and surface that data from the Excel calculator into the Word document. Going back to the dashboard, you can now see, as we scroll down, that a number or two more tasks have been added to that task list. The first one being the pre-renewal report has actually been generated, and you'll see that that's complete. There's also been a policy manager update, which is actually showing an error. And what we wanted to do here was to demonstrate what happens in the event of an exception, because there will be cases where the robot can't do everything for you, and in this case it's thrown up an error. That's presented to the user within the dashboard so that they can easily go and then interrogate that, what's happened, why the robot hasn't been able to process it, and they can then obviously go and handle that manually, if you like. And if that may involve restarting the robot and sending the robot off to go and undertake that task again. But the important thing is that it's highlighted the fact that there is an exception, and the user can then go and handle that. What we're going to focus on now is actually that pre-renewal report, because that has been completed by the robot. So what we're going to focus on now is the pre-renewal report that's been generated by the robot, and you can see the status there on the dashboard that that's been complete. And if we click on that, we can go and have a look at a summary of the what the robot's actually done to create that, when it was done, how it was done, the fact that it's gone through the stages to actually draw the information from multiple sources to create the calculation in the Excel pre-renewal calculator. And all of that's for complete traceability, and to give you an audit trail as to how that was done and who did it, and the timings and what have you. On the left hand side, you'll see that we've still got our actions on the dashboard. So what we can do now is we can actually go to the documents element. We can open up the actual document, and we can see that there are two documents associated with this the renewal. One is the pre-renewal report, which the robot created, and also a copy of the pre-renewal report calculator in Excel that the robot used to draw all the data to, and then actually do the calculations to produce the summary in the renewal report. So if we open up that renewal report, we can see that the user can actually go in and download that document, so that they can start to actually just check and make sure all the details are correct and that they're happy with that document to be submitted to the client. And you'll see when we open up the Word document that we've applied all the necessary headings, the individual text that relates to that client, but most importantly we can see that the robot has uploaded the summary from the Excel pre-renewal calculator and pasted that into the document, and that's essentially saving all of the time and effort that the human operative would normally go through and spend something in order of 25 hours producing. So we've taken out all of that mundane task of doing all of the calculations and bringing the data in from multiple sources. The robot's done all of that, and there you can see the calculations. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea as to some of the ways that we go about creating solutions that enable businesses to undertake more transactions and a higher volume of transactions without the increase in FTE headcount, and actually using robotics to do some of the mundane transactional tasks and the calculations in this case to fulfill that process. So now moving on from the demo, what can we appreciate in terms of outcomes from a solution such as this? Well, the first point really is obviously the boost in productivity and the drive of efficiency, ensuring tasks are undertaken consistently. Obviously, a robot works 24/7, 365 days a year, so obviously we can push more and more transactions through that operative. But also it will undertake tasks in exactly the same way every single time, so you get that increase in consistency and accuracy of all of your tasks. Using robotics and using automation, obviously we can create transparency, but we can also optimize compliance and ensure everything is executed in line with regulatory bodies and compliance and governance. Using low code and robotics, obviously within an organization, we can ensure that organization remains agile and has the ability to adapt to change and to differentiate in terms of what they're doing in terms of serving their customers and providing them with a far faster, speedier and more accurate service. And we can also drive data-driven decision making, so that again we're removing people from actually all of these mundane tasks, but still surfacing the data that they need to make those critical decisions, but more importantly freeing their time to actually make those decisions and focus on what's actually happening within the business. So in this case in particular, obviously we look at ROI and value and how an organisation gets a return on their investment. So just some of the key metrics coming out of this solution. What we found over a period of time was actually that we managed to increase productivity by something in the order of 29%, whilst reducing rework by 43%. So again, giving them far more accuracy in terms of the process and the creation of that pre-renewal document. We reduced training because we haven't got to keep training people to undertake these tasks. We've just trained a robot once, and we've reduced the time to market to about 37%. So again, increased the speed of response that they're giving to clients, and therefore gaining far greater client satisfaction. So where do we go from here? Well, where we generally start with providing solutions for clients is with a strategy session, and if RPA is something that you are considering for your business, we would advise that we start at that point. That strategy session will include an exploratory meeting, really just to understand the use case and identify the optimal options for automation. But we'll also work with you to identify those business drivers and build that business case, and look at the ROI and forecast what the benefits might be of actually an automation solution within your organisation and the overall feasibility of that. Now, if that's something that you're keen to do, please contact us directly at velocityit.com, or you've got my personal email at the bottom of the screen there, roger@velocity-it.com. Please drop me a note. We'd be very happy to have a conversation, have a chat. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you found that useful. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight into how RPA can be used to drive efficiency and productivity without the use of or without the need to increase headcount. Obviously we focus very heavily on a solution particularly for the insurance and financial services industry, but realistically we can apply those same methodologies to any process within any organisation. So thank you very much, and we look forward to speaking with you.